What made you decide to run for governor in the first place?
Well, people forget I had been a mayor first. I was mayor of the sixth largest city in Minnesota from 90 to 94. Right. What made me governor was I was doing statewide talk radio, and in the 90s, economic times were great. Everybody was making huge money. Well, the state of Minnesota had, I think, a $1 or $2 billion budget surplus. In other words, they set a budget, and because taxes and the economy was so powerful, they brought in $2 billion more than they needed. Well, you know what they did with it? Spent it. They had no right to do that. That's our money. That should be given back. They live under a budget. If they get more than their budget calls for, that money should be returned. It's not theirs to keep. Well, they kept it and spent it like kids in a candy store. While I was doing talk radio, I was outraged over that. I said, that's my money, that's our money. What right do they have to spend it because they overtaxed us? So I said, maybe I ought to run for governor. Oh my God, it took off like wildfire, and then I was caught. I had to do it.
Initially, did you really have no intention of it when you said it? And then all of a sudden when people are...
Then all of a sudden people, run, Jesse, run.
Okay.
You know, and then it caught on like wildfire. And then I realized, again, to hold myself to the standard of my hero, Muhammad Ali, I had to run now. I had to do it. So we did it. I remember I announced it on the steps of the Capitol in the middle of the winter alone. And the first thing the media said to me was, well, where's your family? Because you know how politicians always parade the wife and kids out there, sure. Right? And I looked right at the media and said, this isn't about my family. I said, this is the business of running the state of Minnesota. My family has nothing to do with this, and I will keep them separated as much as I can. I will not bring them into it like the typical politician does.
Why do you think you were able to win given how much less money you spent campaigning compared to the other candidates?
Because I was allowed to debate. They made a fatal error. You notice they haven't allowed anybody since. No third party's been allowed to debate since I won.
And I loved what you said in one of the debates. The moderator asked you some question and you just didn't know the answer to it, and you said as much, as opposed to trying to.
Well, I didn't. I remember the question they asked me about the IRRB, which is way up on the Iron Range. It's a government within the government. Well, nobody down here in the city is going to know what the hell the IRRB is. I didn't know what. I says, I don't even know what it is. But I said, if it's important, I'll learn about it. The crowd erupted in applause and cheering because they saw someone who wasn't bullshitting them. They saw someone who got up. Did you know I never used a prepared speech my entire run for governor? I didn't have speech writers. I didn't have what do they call it, spin doctors. We didn't even do polling. We didn't bother. We didn't have the money to do any of that.
Who do you think were the people most responsible for you getting elected?
The citizens of Minnesota. They voted for me. They're most responsible. Now, I know that's not the answer you were looking for because it wasn't the question you were truly asking. I think the people that worked on my campaign that were all volunteers, we only paid one person, the late Doug Friedline, to be my campaign manager, and he left his private sector job to do it. We paid him the equivalent salary he would have gotten. Uh-huh. He was the only paid for person. And I told them at the start, I will not pay my own money to get elected.
How many first-time voters came out that election?
A lot.
And that was largely the difference, too, wasn't it?
That's how come if I run for president, if they let me in the debates, I'd win that too. Bold talk, isn't it?
What's the likelihood you ever try and run?
Who knows? Let's wait till the Libertarian Convention where the Libertarians announce their candidate and that candidate gets ballot access throughout the whole country. Then you time it out, you spend the least money, you come in, you destroy their two candidates if you're allowed in a debate, if they got the frickin' guts to let me in a debate. I'll come in and destroy their two candidates and steal the election in November, just like I did in Minnesota.
Would you like to be president?
No, not particularly. But in the back of my mind, there's always that patriotic voice saying to me, if not you, then who? Who's going to restore America? Who's going to take on the two-party dictatorship and beat them? Who can do that? Well, I've done it twice. Haven't lost yet.
So after
Why do you think I'm a scary guy to them?
Why do you think you're?
Because I've never lost to them. You notice I include them as them. I don't distinguish between the two parties because there is no difference.
After you were
They're
elected,
both owned by the same corporate ownership. It does. In other words, if you go to sports, if you bet on both teams in the Super Bowl, you're not going to lose, are you? Well, if you own both candidates, you're not going to lose, are you?
well, and that's why you've said you wish politicians would have to wear NASCAR type suits with the logos.
Yeah, I wish they'd require anyone running for president to wear a NASCAR suit with patches dictating who owns them. I mean, it's simple. When you see Jimmy Johnson, what do you see? Lowe's.
Right.
Then he's got all his other smaller patches around it. Well, if Jim's for president, there won't be a patch on the suit. It'll be clear white. I imagine some of my opponents wouldn't have enough suit to put the patches on. They may have to have a subordinate wear one too, so they could get all the patches on.
How much do you fault the candidates for that, and how much do you fault just the system today?
I fault the Democrats and Republicans and the system they've created. You notice I don't even discuss the candidates. Didn't do that when I went for governor either. I run against the parties because the candidates are nothing but puppets to the party. The party's got the strings. They're the puppets. That's what you got. There's no strings over Jesse Ventura. No puppet master on me.
So after you're elected governor, I believe you have a conference room in the bowels of the Capitol where one whole wall is covered with sticky notes of messages that you've gotten, everyone from Jay Leno to princes to kings. Your chief of staff, Stephen, was telling me about it the other day. What was that like?
You know, it's funny, I didn't really see it. Stephen would know about it and the people at that part of the staff. I may have seen that wall once, but I really didn't pay attention to it because once you won the election, you have to govern the state of Minnesota. And no one's going to help because I'm an independent. No independent had won. So who do we seek to say for help? They're not going to help. They want me to fail so that an independent will never get elected again. And so the moment I won the election, it was a 7-day work week. Not 24 hours a day, but you can bet at least 12 hours a day or more.
One of your friends said before that by the end of your term, you really didn't like being governor anymore. How true is that?
That's not true. I loved being governor. I would have sought a second term, but I kept it quiet. I did not seek a second term because it was no one's business at the time, but it was because of my wife's health.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And being governor was detrimental to her health. What happened to her, excuse me, during the campaign, she contacted mono and didn't know it. It was improperly diagnosed and it evolved into chronic fatigue syndrome, which is real. And she suffered through chronic fatigue the entire time I was governor. And it was weighing on her a great deal. And I can unequivocally state that my political ambitions are not more important than my wife. In other words, I will give up any political job for her.
To what extent was that at all a hard decision for you?
It was a difficult decision because I wanted to change Minnesota government to unicameral, one house. And it was going to require me to get reelected to attempt to do that because I couldn't even get these cowards to vote it on the floor.